Okay, so we're ready to go. Shalom to everybody. These are places from the last time we even used the board. Haven't used the board in a little bit, but that's ways you could have supported us if you were somebody trying to figure out what that was. We'll bring up some of that information again towards the end. Let me double check what time it is real quick. All right, so we got about 40 minutes or so left. Thank you for joining once again. Shabbat Shalom, or excuse me, Shalom. Been saying Shabbat Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Sabrina, Shalom Erica, Shalom Big Brother Thomas, Beverly, Sharice, User 678 from New York, Joe King, how you doing? Minister Nice, Dimples. Alrighty, cool. So thank you. I'm glad you did ready. Appreciate it. All right, so here we go. What are we going to talk about on this rising specifically? What is the point of this exercise for this rising? This rising we're going to talk about hold on one second for me. Okay. Hold on one second, guys. Okay. Alrighty. And so this is gonna be on the IG page. It'll also be we'll have the vocal recording later on. Is that not how you spell privilege? Privilege. All right, I'm gonna have to check again because somebody's telling me I don't know how to spell privilege. Okay. Did I spell that wrong? Somebody help me out. Did I spell that wrong? Privilege. Is that what you were doing, Casey? I didn't spell it wrong. Okay, why do you spell it? I just looked it up. It said Privilege. Did I mess that up? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Well, thank you for the correction, even though it was more so a trolling thing. But anyway, so thank you guys. So anyway, since we have a little bit of time left, let's get into this. So we're going to talk about privilege, right? What people are privy to, right? The place that people are in that is privy to. Um, um, uh, Somebody said we have the knowledge of self. Make sure you catch up with us, and then you'll be able to talk about that. All right. So here we go. Privilege, right? Well, I guess people would focus on white privilege, this and that, or whatever. If you want me to write that on the board, I can. But I think we all get what the context of privilege is, right? And I guess when somebody wants to go there, um, then we can go there, right? But first of all, privilege. What is somebody privy to? In other words, what is somebody able to get just because of a certain circumstances or things that is there? Yeah, white privilege is a myth, of course, right? So I guess that's where people wanted to go. It's interesting because that's not where it is. I figured we were gonna have to touch on it, but let's go ahead and touch on it now. Okay, white privilege is a myth. All right. So and welcome to everybody who's on. Right. So here we go. White privilege is a myth. White privilege is a myth. White privilege is a myth. There you go. All right. That's what you guys are on. Okay. So let me just ask this. What is this right here? What is lost cause? Right? Since people want to just jump into there, let's jump in there. I don't mind. Right? As long as we don't keep it right. What is lost cause? What is what's the purpose of the 13th and 14th Amendments? What are the purposes? Not what you have I want to declare it is. I'm saying what is the point of the 14th and 15th Amendments? Right? You know what that is? By the way, if you understand that, you'll understand that technically white privilege, in a sense, is a myth because they got you believing that you're white in the first place, and believing that the white stuff that happened, that the real white people did is stuff that actually is something that you still use today, right? But what's lost cause? What's the 13th and 14th Amendments? What do they do? We'll go over this. What is um, the white man's burden? These are things you can look up, by the way. I'm not just rattling things off without knowing what I'm speaking of. What is the white man's burden? By definition, right? And then, of course, what is manifest destiny? Do you hear it? All right? So if somebody's going to say there's no such thing as somebody being able to get something in this system that's been set up because you are quote unquote white, the question is, what are these things and do they cause privilege? Matter of fact, who is Willie Lynch? I mean, let's just go all the way into it if we're going to speak on this stuff. And do you think that any of these things would mean anything? Matter of fact, who were your first presidents who set a precedent? All right, just questions for you, right? If there's no privilege, then question, could it be possible these things would cause any privilege? Could it be possible? You said all things Democrats have exploited. Democrats and Republicans are part of the same coin. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. And anybody foolish enough to be a Republican or a Democrat is somebody who doesn't understand both sides are part of all of these. Matter of fact, if you want to talk I wasn't going to bring this up, but hey, let's go here too. 3/5 compromise, which really doesn't mean that you're 3/5 of a human being. It actually means a black person was considered to be 0% of a human being. We'll explain that. Then after we go there, why not just make sure that we bring this all together, talking about 3/5 of compromise. What is a artificial person? This is all stuff that's part of law. That's why we always say you got to understand and comprehend law. What is an artificial person? We'll just deal with these. Because this is not something that I have to do where I have to give opinion. I don't have to opine on one thing here. All I have to do is list these things. These are real things that you can look up. People are arguing. Remember, culture is always important. What is the culture of these things? It's safe to assume that I believe that Black Lives Matter. It is not safe to assume that I support the Black Lives Matter organization because they are not, in fact, about Black lives. Once again, I am not stuck on political affiliation so much that I can't see reality. So, yeah, you could say that I'm somebody that looks at things for you, right? Those things are things you're trying to push on me, but that's not my standard. It's not our standard here in this live. If you would like to learn about our standard, to realize that the game is to get you to be so stuck on the black-white thing that you don't comprehend the black-white thing was put in place so that, in essence, you would be so stuck on it that you wouldn't recognize they're doing the same things that they did to black people to you as well. They just do it in a more sinister way, even to you, because they're doing it to their own. Technically, if you want to go to their own, right? So you got to make sure that you get this in your head. That's not my standard. My standard is not, oh, all white people suck, all black people are amazing. My standard is not black people suck and white people are amazing. My standard is not we are all Americans, because if you knew what an American was, you would know that many of you are still 14th Amendment citizens, right? So if you comprehend that and you would allow me to just go into that, I promise I got you, right? You would probably find that we have a lot more in common than what you feel we do. But allow it to go there. Like, just listen. Those who have an ear to hear, you will hear what is being said to the assembly. That people have come here today, right? So, lost cause. What is the lost cause? If we're going to talk about there's no such thing as privilege, and they say it's a myth, then you have to show me that the lost cause is a myth. You have to show me that the 13th and 14th Amendments are myths. You have to show me that the white man's burden is a myth. You have to show me that manifest destiny is a myth. You have to show me that Willie Lynch, and what he said, even if you don't believe in him or his letter, you got to show me what is in his letter is a myth, right? Or his speech. You got to show me that these presidents, which really aren't even your first presidents, because there were 8 presidents that came before. Oh, thank you very much. You can put the glasses on me. Appreciate that. You gotta understand that there were 8 presidents that even came before George Washington. But when we talk about these first several presidents, and we show you who they were and what they did, you're gonna have to tell me that they are myths, right? You're going to have to tell me that the 3/5 compromise is in fact a myth. And you're going to have to show me that an artificial person is in fact a myth, which technically they are. But if you know about the 14th Amendment, you know that an artificial person is not a myth. And you will comprehend that whether white or black, many of you, if not all of you listening right now, are artificial people according to 14th Amendment rhetoric. All right? Here we go. So I won't probably be able to go back and forth with you guys. I apologize. I know some of you want me to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, but it really wouldn't allow me to get to the point of showing you what you can just go ahead and find for yourself is fact and not myth. All right? Okay? You ready? Go get a job? Yeah, you need to work a job. People like me don't have to work jobs because we're taken care of. You need the job. You need the job. If I even go and do a side hustle or do a job for a hot second, like that's because I would like to do something extra. I don't have to. You see? Because you're an artificial person. You're owned by the 14th Amendment. You have a 14th Amendment mindset. So you're like, go get a job. I can tell you don't have a job because your hair doesn't look like this, blah, blah, and this and that, or whatever. Yeah, I don't have to do what you have to do because you're an artificial person. I would like for you to not have to have a job, not have to pay taxes, which is all legal if you were an artificial person, but you were a natural person. It's too bad you have to have a job to think that you are an artificial person enough to be respected by 13th and 14th Amendment citizenship. And you have a lost cause, which a lot of people do. So here we go. Is this a myth? Is this a myth? I get money doing exactly what I do right now. Helping people all around the world, being able to make sure that we get land, making sure people eat real food, doing things that are of value. I change lives one mind at a time by being a voice of the voices, speaking the unspoken, and making sure people are taught how to become better versions of themselves and not focus on a timeline thing where they have to be right, but they can be righteous. The word righteous literally means just to be in right legal standing. That's what I do. If you would like to do something similar, you don't have to learn it from me. Learn it from somebody else who's saying the same thing, who you actually would listen to. But at the end of the day, we're trying to do this. I'm an entertainer. I'm not here to entertain you if you don't want to be on. Right? So the lost cause. The lost cause. What is the lost cause? The lost cause. The South and the North, they fought a war about slavery, about money, really. The North wanted to enslave people by different means than what the South did. That's what was happening when they fought the English. The English were keeping about saying, hey, we want to go into capitalism, right? When they fought themselves. The English wanted to keep capitalism or start going to capitalism. The people who would become your presidents, who we'll get to in a little bit, they wanted to be able to make money off of slavery and keep slaves. There were slaves in the North too. So this was not a North-South thing. This was a slave owner thing versus people who were saying, hey, we might not keep doing slavery in the same manner. We want to use capitalism. They fought what you call the Revolutionary War, which was really a civil war because it was amongst themselves, right? They changed themselves into Americans because the definition of American before that meant that you were a black or copper colored person who was native to what we now call the Americas, or back then Turtle Island, or many different names it was called by many different tribes, right? And therefore, they fought that war. That war kept on going. If you look at all the presidents that came in, they had to fight a war against slavery and anti-slavery, capitalism and slavery. That's what they fought about. And then all of a sudden, they got to 1860, when things started really hitting the fan. Right before we look at the 14th and 15th presidents, that was all that they were asking was, hey, we want a president that's going to fight against people who don't want slaves to be in, but we want a president that's going to fight against people that want slaves and won't allow us to have capitalism where everybody is a slave, right? So they fought a war in 1860, right? Or people started leaving what you call the Union in 1860. And they started writing out why they left the Union, and they made it very clear. Look at what Virginia wrote, look at what South Carolina wrote, look at what Florida wrote, look at what Texas wrote, look at what Mississippi wrote. They all wrote that they were leaving because they felt like slavery was something that was going to be attacked. Matter of fact, there were certain people, a couple of the states even wrote that they felt like slavery was something that that was beneficial, mutually beneficial to the bond, which is the slave, and the free, which is the white man. That's what they wrote, right? That was what the fight was about. The Union would eventually win, right? And when they won, they basically said, we're going to get rid of chattel slavery, but we're going to bring in 13th Amendment and 14th Amendment slavery. We're going to get to that next. And so after that loss was there, even though people loved in his day, now we say that, who's the 18th president? Somebody help me. General Grant. He always got this, he was actually loved in his time. If you go back and look at history, and even with people who fought against Grant on the other side, right, wearing that gray uniform, they still said that they had mad respect for Grant, how he treated people, how he didn't just treat them bad, what he tried to do for America, all this stuff. But the lost cause changed the narrative. The lost cause came when the daughters of the Confederacy started telling people that, yo, We think that the South shall rise again. Our daddies and granddaddies and brothers and husbands fought in this war, and they fought for the right for us to have slaves. And we believe that they should have fought for that right for us to have slaves. That's what they were saying. And so they started making all these statues, a lot of statues that were cheap. That's why when you pull these statues down, they pop open and they explode into all these different points, right? That's because they were saying that we need to build this up to show people these are heroic people. And even President, who was the president of the Confederacy? President Jefferson Davis, the former president, the only president of the Confederacy, at first wrote out and gave a speech in 1860 before he left the Union and betrayed the United States of America, right? He wrote a speech saying, specifically, we're fighting for states' rights, but also a big part of states' rights is the ownership of slavery, right? So yes, it was states' rights, but states' rights for it always followed the money. Slave owners were making a lot of money. Capitalists wanted to make a lot of money without chattel slavery. Something had to give. They had to fight about it, and they spilled a lot of innocent blood over it. Whether they were white or whether it was white or black blood, or native blood, or whatever you want to call it, they spilt a lot of blood to make sure that they did this. So the lost cause was rhetoric, is something that came across to say that, hey, the South shall rise again, right? And even people who wave that Confederate flag, right, that flag, and I can't draw that well, so forgive me, but you'll get the hint, right? The flag that they always do, and they talk about, they had the stars inside the thing, and they got one thing going this way with a bunch of stars and stuff in it, right, and all that stuff, and then they got another one going across, blah, blah, blah. Y'all know what I'm talking about. When they wave that flag that they wave, right, that has all those stars and all that stuff inside, that is not even the flag. People don't even know when that pops up, that's not the flag. That's not the Confederate flag. The Confederate flag, that was a little piece that was in the corner for a couple versions of the Confederate flag. There were many versions of the Confederate flag. This is not the Confederate flag. This is a rebel flag, right? A rebellion flag. We are rebellious against what? The United States of America, still to this day. All right, right. Well, at one point, yeah, it was the Army of the Virginia flag, but they got it because it was part of this rebel notion, right? Many people had this, but it wasn't just a flag. This was not the colors of the Confederacy. This was something that pops up when it comes to we want slave ownership. This was something that popped up in Jim Crow. This is something that popped up in the 1800s, right? The Reformation. This is something that popped up again in the 1960s. This is something that popped up again in the 90s. This is something that's been popping up since about 2015 or so again, right? Only when we're dealing with, hey, you guys are mistreating white people, blah, blah, this and that, the South shall rise again. Lost cause, right? But some people will still say privilege is just a myth, right? There's nothing that makes me more privileged than anybody else. Not even the mindset that makes me more privileged, even though we're showing very clearly there's a mindset there, right? But okay, if there's not a mindset that says that you're more privileged than somebody else, well then explain to me the 13th and 14th Amendments. What did they do? 13th Amendment, Lincoln had his hands on this. This is why I don't care about your Republican or Democrat or who he switched to or whatever. 13th or 14th Amendment, Lincoln, 13th Amendment, he helps to do what? You were told that he stopped slavery. Even though chattel slavery, we know that chattel slavery existed into the 1960s and 1970s because there were black people and white people who have talked about how people, even the FBI, knew that they were still enslaving people in certain places in the South. Was it as widespread as it was? Most certainly not. But did it still exist? Yes. So chattel slavery didn't really end. Even though you could say that was illegal, they were doing it and hiding it, right? But 13th Amendment didn't say slavery was over. 13th Amendment said we can no longer enslave you just because you're black, right? 13th Amendment didn't enslave you just because you were black. 13th Amendment said we can't enslave you just because you're black. So what do we have to do? We have to put you in prison. Prison, the pipeline stuff starts. Well, now we start making rules and regulations that we can arrest you just because you crossed the street wrong, or because you didn't stop at a stop sign, or because you didn't have what we determined to be the exact identification that you needed, right? The license that you need. Those of you who are still 14th Amendment citizens, you're about driving, not traveling, because you have to be licensed commercially to do what you do, because you don't know what it is to be free of that, right? So 13th Amendment. You were told, right? That made you a slave. That means if you black or white, by the way, if you go to prison, you're gonna be a slave. Anybody who's been to prison will tell you straight up, like if they've been there long enough, if they've been in the pen long enough, if you don't work as a slave, you go into the hole, right? You're gonna be in the hole because you're a slave. They can do whatever they want. If you're in debt still to this day, by definition, you are a slave. Anyone who's a slave is in debt. Anybody who's in debt is a slave. 13th Amendment, citizenship. 13th Amendment, that's what happened. 14th Amendment comes along, which Lincoln helped to develop, but obviously he didn't see because he died before it came out. But in 1866, 14th Amendment comes out. What does that say? 14th Amendment now adds this new law that had never existed before. Never existed before. It's not cool. It's actually putting people in slavery. It says if you're born here, then you're automatically a citizen of the United States excuse me, not a citizen of the United States of America. They actually developed with this, the thing that many people don't know, the United States Corporation. There is a Constitution of the United States of America. That's the original one, 1789. There's a Constitution of the United States, came out in 1866. When that comes out, they come out with this 14th Amendment that says if you were born here, you are now a United States citizen. You are no longer a citizen of the United States of America. Meaning that you are birthed into this place, right? You do not just come out the birth, or you're not just born, right? You're not just somebody who, you're not somebody like you don't come out the amniotic fluid. You come out the water, and you are birthed into this fake corporation called the United States of America. I'm sorry, the United States. The United States of America is the real deal. The United States is where your straw man comes from. Your birth certificate identifies you as somebody who's not a natural person. You're an artificial person. We'll get to that in a bit, right? And why did they do this though? Because Black people started something, or well, really Lincoln actually give Lincoln a little bit of credit, even though he was still trying to manipulate stuff. Lincoln allowed Frederick Douglass and others to start this thing called the Freedmen Bank. The Freedmen Bank was a bank specifically for Black people who at that time, because of not Lincoln, but General Sherman, who didn't even like Black people, but he allowed Black people to have 40 acres and a mule because he wanted to break those who were traitors to the United States of America. He wanted to break them down. Study what General Sherman would say later about Black people and white people. He didn't like Black people, but he did this to win the war. He told people even before the war started, if I get into this, I promise you, you're not going to like what's going to happen because y'all ain't ready for war. You're not ready for what's going to happen with people dying. You're not ready with the decisions that have to be made to win at all costs. Right? 14th Amendment says if you're born here. Now, why? Because Black people were doing well with 40 acres and a mule, and well before we talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, you dropped a bomb on me and all that stuff. They understood that what was going on here, 14th Amendment, comprehend this, get this, be ready for this. You ready? They comprehended that in the 14th Amendment, they comprehended, that Black people were doing very well. They were making more money with this Freedmen Bank. Black people might have been many things, might not have been as educated, might not know what's going on, might have forgot their culture, but they knew how to work. They knew how to job out. They knew how to slave. They knew how to toil. So now that they were toiling for themselves and making money, and they didn't have to report to anybody else, had their own land, had their own mule, right, and were able to develop other things, they were getting a lot of money in this Freedmen Bank. They shut it down, 14th Amendment, 1866. Lincoln helped develop it, right? So he just went with what Sherman did so that he could win the war. Then he said, we still got to break this up. And he worked with Republicans and Democrats and whatever was left of the Whig Party and all that stuff. He worked with them. 14th Amendment. 14th Amendment, if you're born here, you belong to us. That means you're not a freedman anymore. Black people at that time, legally, were not even called freedmen. They were called, they were not even called Black people. They were not called Negroes. They were not even called N-words. They were called freedmen because they were free. They had land. So what did they do? They said, we don't want not only Black people, but any people ever again to get in a position to where they're over us and making this much money and have this much control over their lives. What are we going to do? If you're born here now, you're not free. If you're born here, you belong to the United States Corporation. That's what the 14th Amendment is. Go look it up. 14th Amendment does not say that you are this free person. The 14th Amendment, matter of fact, go look up the case of Susan B. Anthony against the United States of America. And what you will discover is the Supreme Court told her that it's a very bad argument to talk about the 14th Amendment for your right to vote because the 14th Amendment does not protect rights. And laws are supposed to protect rights. You already have rights. Laws protect rights. So if you're going to use an amendment that takes away rights, you're actually doing something that's anti-law. You shouldn't use that in the court of law to make sure that you win an argument. Okay? All right. So 13th and 14th Amendment, you have to prove to me that's a myth. If that's a myth, if what I'm saying is a myth, then privilege coming out of that would be a myth, right? Here's another one, the white man's burden. What is the white man's burden? Have people even heard of the white man's burden? Shalom, Chef, how you doing? Have people even heard of the white man's burden? And thank you everybody for the gifts and the likes and all that stuff. We appreciate it. It helps with the algorithm, right? The white man's burden, literally, is something that was created, right? Because you had cognitive dissonance. How are we going to be slaves over people and at the same time say that we worship this Jesus who says that it's all right to be able to, that we should love everybody, even our enemies? How can we do this, right? The white man's burden comes up. The white man's burden declares that the Most High himself, or who you guys would call God, that God himself said that it is our burden to carry, that everybody who is not living our lifestyle and living underneath us is somebody who we need to put underneath that, because God himself wants everybody to act like white people. That's the white man's burden. So they grew up in an era, and see, people are still generationally, you're not that far. Remember, generation's only 40 years removed. So you're only 4-5 generations removed from people who were executing this stuff and teaching this, which means that you still have some of this in you. You have it in your DNA memory, bare minimum, right? And so you have a burden, right? That's what you're taught. You're taught this in school, that it is white people's burden to make sure that they make sure everything's else. Civil rights needs to be allowed by white people, right? Integration needs to be allowed by white people. Segregation needs to be allowed by white people. Making sure that we take care of Asian hate needs to be done by white people. Making sure we protect the woman's body needs to be done by white people. Feminism, right, which is supposed to be something about all women, is supposed to be something that helps out to make sure that all women can live like white women. The white man's burden. You have to prove to me that that's not something that was developed. You have to prove to me that's something that wasn't taught. You have to prove to me that that's something that still doesn't exist today. If you can, then privilege doesn't exist, right? But let's keep on going. Like I said, matter of fact, there's one that we're going to throw in here that I didn't write out. I'm going to write it on the side here in a second. Manifest destiny. You have to prove to me, if this privilege isn't real, which is people are privy to things because of systems or mindsets or things, mantras, whatever, that have been created, don't privilege or make certain things privy to certain things that everybody else is not privy to. You got to prove to me that manifest destiny isn't real. You have to prove to me that manifest destiny isn't real. Can you prove to me that manifest destiny isn't real? I can prove to you that it is. You know why? Because Rudyard Kipling, who everybody loves, so his work, or stuff based off his work. You know it. It's called The Jungle Book. The writer of The Jungle Book. He wrote to the Republic of the United States of America when he saw that they were growing in power, and to the United States Corporation when he saw they started growing in power. He wrote a note and wrote a letter saying specifically, hey, make sure you teach your children about manifest destiny. He said, make sure you teach them. Make sure you keep it going. That we as white men, because of the white man's burden, it is our destiny to manifest white people on top and everybody on the bottom. I'm sorry, I see the questions about nationality. I'm probably not gonna have time for it today. I apologize. I really do. But I gotta focus in on this rising. I apologize. We can try and get into it another time. I promise. If you want to send it to me in a DM and say, can you focus on it? On the next live, I promise you, I'll get you on it. Today I'm not gonna have the time, so I apologize. All right. And thank you for everybody that's on. Hundreds of you coming on in the time today. We appreciate it. Thousands of you coming off and on. We really appreciate you. All right. Manifest destiny. Manifest destiny, right? So we need to manifest, right? Because of the white man's burden, it is our destiny to manifest white on top, black on the bottom. Something that was taught over and over again. If this doesn't exist, if I'm lying about this, then maybe privilege doesn't exist. But would manifest destiny, people who are in power, making sure that white people always cause a system where white people on top and black people on the bottom, it's their destiny, would that cause somebody to be privy to some things that somebody else wouldn't be? Right? If you can prove to me that the lost cause is fake, that the 13th, 14th Amendments aren't real, if the white man's burden isn't real, if the manifest destiny isn't real, then I'll step back and say, maybe you're not privileged. I didn't say that you didn't have hard times. What I said is that even when you go through the hard times, somebody will look at your hard times and say, well, that's not right, because it's our burden to make sure that our white brother isn't getting stuff, so we got to figure out a way to manifest something because it's his destiny. He should live better. He shouldn't be living like black people. Even if they don't really do it, even if they're not really about what they say, but that's part of their mindset, right? They'll look at a black person in your situation though and say, hey, it's our burden to make sure that they're down there anyways, unless they're going to act like us, and we're supposed to manifest that. It's our destiny, so therefore it's their destiny, they would be on the bottom. So that's not saying that privilege means you won't have hard time, but it does mean if somebody looks at you and another person of another color, they'll look at it and say, well, it might be their destiny to do that. It was taught. If that was taught, probably causes somebody to be privy to some things. Therefore, you have a privilege. Okay, let's go a little deeper on the side though. Let's because I didn't write this one in. People don't like it when I use this one, but this is real talk, right? Even before I was somebody who started talking about being in the kingdom, and somebody who was going to church, and then stopped going to church and became in the actual kingdom and learned about Yashtel and all these different things, and learned who Elohim is and that God is a fake deity and all these different things. Before I even started harping on all that stuff, there's another one over here. right? Let's separate it since I didn't write it in there just so you can see it. It's called evolution. And really, when we're talking about evolution, really what we're talking about, people don't want to call it this anymore, but this is what it was, right? Is Darwinism, a system based off of what Darwin taught y'all. And what was the title of Charles Darwin's book? Charles Darwin's book is the origin. It's the theory of. The origin of species: the theory of evolution, not the truth, not the fact. The theory. A theory is not a fact. A theory is B. A, we're starting here. C, we're trying to get here. We can't figure out B, so we come up with theories to be able to get us from point A to point C. All right. So the theory of evolution, that has been disproven, by the way, as far as Darwinism specifically. But still, I know some people argue. I'm not here to argue evolution. I'm here to argue what Darwin said about evolution. What did Darwinism, the system based on what Darwin said? His book title was The Origin of Species, The Theory of Evolution, The Struggle of Survival for Favored Races. The struggle of survival for what? For favored races. Because in evolution, the strong should survive. The weak should go away, just naturally, right? That's what, you call it natural selection. That's what Darwin told you to call you, right? So therefore, Darwin wrote a whole book. Read the book. He wrote a whole book to prove to you that it's even in the book, white people come from the best animals, and then other colors come from worse animals. Black people, of course, the darkest black people being on the bottom, coming from the worst of animals. But the people came from the best of animals. Those are white people, and therefore they're on top, not on the bottom. Why? Because he believed in the white man's burden. He believed in manifest destiny. Therefore, evolution showed that they were manifesting. They were just simply, it was their destiny to manifest because they came from the best animals. Even if you believe in evolution, that's where your evolution came from. Now, if you want to say somebody broke away from it, fine, you have to prove that down the road. But that's where that started. It started with Darwinism. It started with that. Darwinism told you that you can go ahead and do whatever you want as far as evolution. Evolution proves manifest destiny. So if Darwinism isn't true, I'm not even talking about evolution. I'm just trying to show you evolution came from Darwinism as far as what people's concept of it is. So if Darwinism, right? If Darwinism, yeah, I'm glad you are heading down. Hopefully you can keep those brain cells intact. Right, amen. So if Darwinism is what we say it is, right? If Darwinism basically is talking about basically manifest destiny, right? And the white man's burden, because Darwin, by the way, the only degree he had, even though he did this, the only degree Darwin actually had, his family paid for him to go to school for a year to get a degree. Only degree that Darwin actually had was he was actually somebody who was going to become and totally, I guess, technically was a minister. He was a preacher. That's what he got a degree in, was in theology. But this theologist, white man's burden, grew up in a household. Check out Darwin's uncle sometime to see what his uncle believed in, right? But Darwin believed in that evolution was just simply God's way of showing manifest destiny. He wrote a book about it, and people who supported his thought process, they helped him to get this book out. So you got to prove to me the lost cause is a myth. 13th and 14th Amendments are myths. The white man's burden is a myth. Manifest destiny is a myth, and that Darwinism, messing around with you, even what you think evolution is a myth. And if those are, then I guess there's nothing so far that I'm saying that will cause you privilege. But let's keep on going, because you guys keep saying this is older stuff, right? Because evolution actually too, or Darwinism, leads to things like his cousin. His cousin is the one, Darwin's cousin is the one that actually came up with eugenics. And if you study eugenics is what gets us to the IQ test. Because the person that brought the IQ test over from La Francais, or from France, over to the Republic of the United States of America, he brought it over. And he brought it over because he said, yes, I believe in Darwinism. This is what he said. I believe in Darwinism. I believe in eugenics, and I believe that this IQ test that you have that separates the higher class white people in France from the lower class white people in France is what we should use to separate the white people in America from every other class in America, because the intellectual quotient is based on our intel. The information that we believe in as a culture should be what's on top. Therefore, the information that we believe as a culture should be on top is the information that we'll use to support manifest destiny and the white man's burden through IQ tests using eugenics. That's what the guy said who brought it over. You can say no, you can be upset, you can be frustrated. What I would invite you to do is study to show yourself approved. Go and look this up for yourself. See where the IQ test came from. See if France developed it first, like I said. See if they developed it to separate the classes. See if somebody in America said, that's pretty good, I'm going to go study that. See if he said, we're going to take it back. See if he printed out a whole bunch of them and sent them to school systems all over the nation. all over your nation, the United States of America, or if you're in that corporation, that 14th Amendment citizenship of the United States, right? To separate the classes and to say you deserve to be treated like less, right? So if somebody tells me that privilege is not real, that people can't be privy to certain things that other people can't, should be as well, and there's nothing that separates it all, well then, okay, the lost cause is a myth. That rebel flag is a myth, right? The 13th and 14th Amendment, those are myths. The white man's burden is a myth. Manifest destiny is a myth. Darwinism is a myth. Eugenics is a myth. IQ tests are myths. All right, but some people would still say that's not real. Okay, well, Willie Lynch, in Willie Lynch's letter, Willie Lynch said that we need to make sure that we cause a system that reverses the nature of a whole group of people. He said, I did this in the Caribbean. I'm going to teach you guys how to do it in Virginia, a place even called Lynchburg, based on off of his arrival and his family being there. And when you read this letter, when you read this speech, you will discover that he said things that were going to separate you by age, by class, by color, by plantation, right? The size of your plantation, the location of your plantation. That's why people go Brooklyn, Chi-Town. I'm from the D, H-Town, Miami. Why do they say that? Because the plantation you're in, something that we were taught, and we kept it going for generations. Read a book by Dr. Joy DeGruy called PTSS, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, in which he talks about the fact that we have not, as a nation, let alone as a black people, gone through the process of actually going through therapy to be able to figure out all the things we're still carrying from a very wicked, messed up system that causes damage to black and white alike, right? But you got to tell me that, but Willie Lynch, even those people who would argue Willie Lynch was real, which I don't even comprehend why that's an argument, and it just started in the 80s, but okay. Even if you want to go ahead and say that Willie Lynch is not real, all right, did what he say? Is what is stated in there, is that real? Did they separate people by age? Did they make sure that marriage was something that was illegal? Did they make sure that there was colorism, as far as they started saying, hey, if you got white blood in you, you're better than somebody who's got black blood, but you're still a slave? Did they start instituting these things? If that's a myth, then it's a myth that somebody could be privileged from that, and that somebody could get a head start, even if you want to go there. You said you don't know therapy to know you've been programmed. Yeah, it's not the therapy to show you've been programmed. I agree with that. It's the therapy as far as to make sure that if you've been programmed and you went through some stuff, have you ever gone through, even if you say you want to do it on your own or with the help of whatever your deity is, or through your meditation or whatever, have you gone through the process of actually seeing certain things? Like if you say you're going to whoop somebody, the reason why you say you're going to whoop somebody is because they used to whoop you or whip you. And they would sometimes, the overseer wouldn't just whip you. Sometimes he would say, hey, black person, whip your own family because you won't whip him as bad as I will. And so black people thought that they were, by whipping their own family, right, not spanking, not disciplining, but by whipping them, they felt like they were showing love, more love than the overseer would. That's why somebody says, I only whoop you because I love you. You've heard that. That's where that comes from, right? What about these presidents? I'm running out of time. I got to take my leave from you all. Thank you for being on, no matter if you agree with us, disagree with us, etc., right? Yeah, but your presidents. If you're somebody who starts with George Washington as your first president, he was not, but that's why. You said victim playing? No, actually, victors are terrible people if you look up in history. I don't want to be a victor. I don't want to be a victim. And matter of fact, my culture, I believe I'm more than a conqueror. So even conquering stuff, I squash it. I'm more than a conqueror. So a victor is not even on my level. A victor, by definition, has to change the outcome of stuff and has to change history or change the story into his story in order that he would be a victor. I don't have to change the story of anything, right? I'm greater than that. I'm better than that. I'm more suited to make sure that my people are taken care of than that. So you can be a victor all you want. I'm not a victim because you can't handle somebody like me. In all honesty, if you could, you wouldn't have came on with that victor or victim mentality stuff. That was right on cue, whoever did that. Right on cue. We just needed a little cigarette in my mouth to hit the meme, right? But the presidents. Who's your first president? You guys look at George Washington as your first president, even though he said he had two presidents that were his favorite before he was president, which means that obviously he's not the first president. Nevertheless, your first presidents. First president, George Washington. Second president, John Adams. Third president was, Thomas Jefferson. Fourth president, you're dealing with Madison. Fifth president, you're dealing with Monroe. Sixth president, you're dealing with Adams' son. Seventh president, you're dealing with, you get away a little bit from what I'm about to talk about, but let's even go. Seventh president is Andrew Jackson. Eighth president is Martin Van Buren, who's actually the only person who wasn't an English person or wasn't born in the Republic or wasn't born in the Republic of the United States of America to be president. He's actually a foreign president as well. And you keep on going down this list, you'll find that this thing keeps on going until about the 18th, 19th, 20th president. Let's say the 18th, Ulysses S. Grant is kind of the end of this. And Lincoln was one of these too, by the way, if you study him and study Mary Todd and what Lincoln believed in himself. You ready? Your first president was a Virginia slave owner. Your second president had to work for a Virginia slave owner to become president. The third president was a Virginia slave owner. The fourth president was a Virginia slave owner. The fifth president was a Virginia slave owner. The sixth president had to work for Virginia slave owners. The seventh president was not a Virginia slave owner. He was a Tennessee slave owner. The next president, he was not a Virginia slave owner. He actually was a slave owner from New York. The next president after that, their ninth president, would have been a Virginia slave owner. The 10th president after that would have been a Virginia slave owner. So what am I trying to say here? That your presidents who set the precedent for everything, and these Masons that got you to believe that you were white, even though real white people are the people that control you, right? But those of you who still think that you might be white, hey, shalom, babe, I didn't see you. Come on. My wife, the Honorable Bloom and Flourish, is on. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, and her website. Not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. Thanks for being on, babe. I love you so much, and thanks for being on. I actually was going to send you a message right after this. I still will. So presidents, right, who set precedent, they were Virginia slave owners or had to work for Virginia slave owners or were Tennessee slave owners or New York slave owners or back to Virginia slave owners. At the end of the day, they were all slave owners. So much so that what is Washington, D.C. originally? What is Washington, D.C. originally? For those of you who don't know, who would even talk about that, Washington, D.C. helps me with the whole thing because Washington, D.C. is where the corporation of the United States is, and it's also the capital of the United States of America. What is Washington, D.C.? How did they get the land for that? They got it from Virginia. Right? This is stuff that you can look up if you don't believe me. They got the land from Virginia. George Washington himself went and got it. He secured it. And what did he do with the land? He put a bunch of slaves on there, right? Slaves lived there. If you're from D.C., you know when it says Foggy Bottom at that metro station, even though they gentrified it, you know Foggy Bottom means that's where a bunch of slaves were living in the fog. Okay? So, you had these presidents on who set precedent, right? You had these presidents on, and what happened? And what did they do? They were slave owners. He went and he got land, put slaves on it, and then put a big White House. Or actually, I'm sorry, he asked people, even including Thomas Jefferson, who lost. He was second. That's why Thomas Jefferson made all these changes to the White House. And some of them don't function because if you see like his house of Monticello, he thought of himself as like this person that was really an inventor, and he really wasn't that great at what he invented. But Thomas Jefferson actually lost. He was like second. He got second place. Somebody else got the contract, built the White House. Right, not even all the one that you know because it gets burned down again later on. But he built the original White House, painted it white, had a bunch of black slaves, put overseers on it. Right, and then anybody that came that was president was over these black people. We would call that slaves under a slave owner or a president, if you would call it, living on a plantation with the master's house, which we would call what? We would call that I guess you could even call it a plantation house, mansion, etc. That's what Washington, D.C. was built for. Now, was Washington, D.C. helped to be built even in that by a Moore, by Benjamin Banneker? Yeah. It doesn't mean that it wasn't a plantation. Now you don't think of it like that because they would never dare tell you that. They would never dare tell you that George Washington's monument, which is nothing more than a penis, is an obelisk. It's a penis representing the fact that he lost his penis because he lost his penis to syphilis because he was raping slaves. And that he has it right across from the goddess Columbia who sits on top of the Senate building. District of Columbia, Washington, the father god, District of Columbia, the mother god. They reworked the whole Kemetic story and put it to you. But you don't, they said it's not the Kemetic story anymore, it's the white man's story because it's part of this lost cause that means that you're a 13th and 14th Amendment citizen and it's the white man's burden, even with his penis sticking up in the middle of D.C., to manifest this destiny of Willie Lynch through Darwinism and evolution and set a precedent as the president. Yet you tell me that it's a myth. I'm not telling you anything that you shouldn't have already known. I'm giving context to facts. I'm giving you contextual facts. You've never had somebody explain this to you like this. A lot of you haven't. Some of you know all this, but some of you haven't. That's why some of you are sitting here still arguing. But I'm not giving you anything that's fake. This is all stuff that's real. What about 3/5 compromise? I really got to get ready to take my leave, but I'm going to make sure we do this. We do have a YouTube channel. They actually canceled the last YouTube channel. They pushed it down because the World Health Organization didn't like some stuff I had to say as far as things to protect people's rights. So we're starting over again. It's all great though. Just look for hashtag Find Kofi on all these platforms. You should be able to find us. We have a podcast, the Kofi of 40 podcast. My name up top, the Kofi of 40, no number two, no underscore, just the Kofi of 40 podcast. Look that up. If you want to join it live when we're on live, just look up, look it up on Podbean so you can join. You can even call in through there as well, right? But the three-fifths compromise. Three-fifths compromise. Three-fifths compromise doesn't mean you're three-fifths of a human being. It's actually worse. This is why. Monroe helped develop this, by the way. So Thomas Jefferson gets the credit for it. Monroe actually helped to develop it before Monroe was president. Thomas Jefferson was the president that signed off on it. What is that? Three-fifths compromise. Three-fifths compromise is that the Republic of the United States of America, you had these 13 colonies. But remember, Carolina was not North and South Carolina. Both of those were one big state or one big country. That's what state means. It means country, right? And then Virginia was not Virginia and West Virginia. It was one big state. It was one big country. So you had 13 colonies, and you had these huge colonies down towards the south, right, that had more land, had more stuff, but were trying to pay the same rate of taxes, if not even pay less taxes. And people caught up with that in the north. So they said, hey, why are you guys paying less? You guys got more. They said, well, just because we have more of this and that. They also had the most land going to the west. Virginia was stretching out and taking over stuff in the west. They looked at themselves as a country. They weren't looking at themselves as a colony. That's what the new stuff they tell you today. They were looking at themselves as a country. They were taking over. So they came to this compromise and said, okay, look, you guys got more than us, this and that or whatever. Fine. We asking that you still pay, you're going to end up paying 3/5 of what's going on, right? You guys got more. Fine. We ain't paying what you want us to pay, but we'll pay 3/5 because technically we got more, this and that or whatever. Fine, we'll pay our way. But then people started saying, well, you guys got these black people down there who work for you, right? Aren't they supposed to get taxed too? Or aren't you supposed to get taxed for them if they're your indentured servants, which really they're not, they're your slaves? And they said, no, they're slaves, they're not indentured servants. They said, either way, they're people. And what they did is they said, no, we don't treat them like people. We don't believe they're people. We believe we can hang them. We don't believe they're on the level of dogs. We don't believe that they're high enough on the evolutionary chain, right? We don't believe any of those things. So they said, they're not people. They had another argument. Finally said, okay, they're not people, but you still got to pay taxes on them if they're your property. They're your property, right? They say, yeah, they're our property, but they're not people, so we'll pay taxes on them. So since they are 0% of a person, they only had to pay 3/5 tax. So the 3/5 compromise didn't say that you were 3/5 of a human being. The 3/5 compromise said that you were 0% of a person. So if the 3/5 compromise doesn't exist, then maybe white privilege doesn't exist, or maybe peoples aren't privileged to certain things, right? And still to this day, here's what I say, even when people say it doesn't affect, which we've shown you how these things affect things today. But here's the deal. Even with all that stuff, you have this thing here called an artificial person. Now, you got to really be in the law to know what I'm talking about with an artificial person. Allow me to explain it very quickly so I can take my lead and allow you guys to get ready for your day as well. And hopefully you have a great day and an amazing day and you change lives one mind at a time, whether you agree with this or not. This would probably help you to change lives better because you would look at everybody, including yourself, in a different manner so that we can all be what you say we are, which is human beings, right? But to understand that the law doesn't look at black people or colored people or Negro people as human beings. The law, Black's Law Dictionary, look it up for yourself. That's what they use in court, Black's Law Dictionary, literally called that, Black's Law Dictionary. I think we're on edition 8 or edition 9 right now, but look up any edition and you will discover that a black, a Negro, or a colored person is not considered to be a natural person. That's what you want to be in a court of law, but you're considered to be an artificial person. So by law, if I sign any documentation, I'm not going to put black on anything anymore. Right? I don't do that anymore. What I do is I don't put native on anything anymore, right? Because they might be able to say, well, you're technically copper colored or black and therefore you're not a natural person. I just put other and then I put natural person. Because if you're an artificial person by law, then you're a 14th Amendment citizen by law, which means you're owned, your straw man is owned, and you're connected to your straw man by being connected to the United States Corporation, created in 1866. Okay? So I have no problem saying I'm black, I'm beautiful, I'm proud. I have no problem with my Twi roots, my West African roots, my Yashlea roots, my North African roots, my Kemetic roots, my Northeast African roots, and all these different roots that I have. I have more. I have no problem being Olmec. I have no problem being Taino. I have no problem being Cherokee, any of those things. But when I come into a court of law or when I'm signing a document, I'm not an artificial person according to what you guys say. I am a natural person. I'm not black. I'm not white. I'm not Hispanic. I'm not Taino. I'm not it. Nope. I am a natural person. Because to be considered black in this system is to be considered artificial. And so therefore you can do whatever you want to an artificial person, can't you? You can do whatever you want to a straw man, can't you? Right? Matter of fact, if somebody goes to court, right? Check this out. If you go to court and they say, "Are you so and so?" Right? If your name is Mary and they say, "Are you married?" You don't say, "No, I'm married." You don't say, "Yes, I'm married." You don't say, "Yes, Your Honor." What you say is, "Your Honor, I'm here to represent the straw man known as Mary." Because your straw man or your birth certificate is the only thing that's ever on trial. You're never on trial. Did you know that? Part of the legislative system. Even when you go before a judge is a public servant, but they have to serve natural people, right? The judge is part of the legislative branch. Unless you go to the Supreme Court, that's the only judicial branch. Remember, there's executive, there's legislative, there's judicial. The executive is the president that still technically has to answer to the legislative branch. The judicial is the person who's supposed to judge the legislative and executive branch. Then you have the legislative branch who legislates, right? Part of 1866, they're over the corporation. They literally take on the same thing the military does. They have to support and defend the Constitution of what? Of the United States. Not the United States of America, different Constitution, the Corporation of the United States. So they have to be artificial people in order to legislate artificial legislation. You see that? We'll have some more stuff talking about this. We even have a class on sovereignty and stuff like that as well. So I promise you we'll get to it. I just got to rest because I have to take my leave. So long story short, as I get ready to take my leave, if you can prove to me, the people who keep saying that I'm wrong, if you can prove to me that the lost cause is a myth, that the 13th and 14th Amendments are myths, that the white man's burden is a myth, that manifest destiny is a myth, that evolution and Darwinism is a myth, that Willie Lynch is a myth, that the presidents are a myth, setting these precedents, that the Three-Fifths Compromise is a myth, and that artificial people are myths, then I'll have to say that there's nothing that gives you privilege in this corporation called the United States. I'll have to admit that. Problem is, I don't think that you'd be able to find that. That's where I don't really have to worry about admitting too much on these things. So we appreciate you all for being on. I must take my leave. Once again, we give all honor to the Most High, Yahshua HaMashiach, who is over every single thing. And I'm thankful and grateful that he would allow me the time and the opportunity and grace me the privilege, if you will, of being able to come in front of you all again. Thank you so much for being on. We're going to put our information above my head real quick if you need to get in contact with us. Remember, so real quick announcements and then I'm out. Thank you so much. Real quick announcements for you all. So October 1st is coming up. I'm sorry. So whatever the last Sunday is. So really this Sunday coming up, we're going to do our special session that we do live with my wife on. And so we'll be doing that on this Sunday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Those that would like to join us on a regular basis, we're on every day at 8 a.m. Eastern New York time. I mean, every day, 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern New York time. And we're on every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. This Sunday, which should be September 26th, we'll be on in front of you all with the special session with my wife for the live. After that, give me a second, y'all. I'm sorry. After that, October 1st, which is the first Friday of this month, the first Friday of every month we do this, but for this time it'd be October 1st. We ask people to go out into their neighborhood, into their environment, to their families, to a homeless person, to a shelter, whatever, and just be a blessing to somebody. Whatever that is, that's between you and the Most High. We ask that you be a blessing to somebody October 1st. October 8th, or the week of October 11th. We'll be starting our classes for the next semester, if you want to call it that, if you will, for our university, our online university. The 6 classes that'll be there, all be at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern in New York time. We also will record them, so if you need to catch them on a recording, just let us know. Just catch up with us. We'll make sure that we have that information for you. But they'll all be at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern in New York time, and it will be Mondays will be on marriage. Tuesdays will be on monarchy, right? So you can comprehend what it is to be a king or a queen, and so how some of this stuff works. Then Wednesdays will be on sovereignty, right? It'll be just basics on how can we become sovereign? How do we change our mindset? How do we deal with court? How do we deal with finances? How do you discharge debt instead of pay on debt? Things like that. 4th day after that will be Natural Medicine 1, right? So we interchange that in semesters. My wife just finished teaching Natural Medicine 2, so we'll be bringing back Natural Medicine 1. On Fridays, we'll be talking about cysts, especially for our sisters out there and women in general and men too, but women and our black sisters especially because of certain things that happen with us as far as lineage and things like that. We need to make sure that we talk about those cysts. If you'd like to take that class, we do think that you need to know natural medicine 1, natural medicine 2, whether we teach it or whether you get it from someone else, please make sure, you can still take the class, but she's not going to have time to go back and keep rewinding and keep telling you everything you don't know as far as terms and terminology and stuff. So if you would like to be about the class, if you can catch up, or if you feel like you can keep up with it, or if you want to take natural medicine 1 and 2 first, feel free to do so. That'll be on Fridays, and then the last class will be on Saturdays. That'll be on Hebrew characters. How do you actually look at Paleo Hebrew and know what Aleph, Beit, Gemal, Dalet, He, Vav, Zion, etc., all the way to Tav? What do they mean, right? What does it mean when somebody says Barashit in the beginning of the word? When somebody says 666, which is the number of a name or an authority, do you even know what that means? Or are you just going off of somebody saying protons, electrons, neutrons? Or they wrote this on the side of this thing. Do you know why they would even write that on the side of the thing, right? We want you to comprehend that. So that's, once again, Mondays is going to be marriage. Right. And by the way, if you're single, that'll work for you too, because in our culture, you have to be a husband before you get married. You have to be a wife before you get married. That's why he who finds a wife finds a great thing and obtaineth favor with them. Yes, once again, we do record the classes. So even if you can't be at every single one, we'll have them recorded for you. If you can't be at a single one, you can watch the recording, get in contact with me. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, I got all the information above my head as far as where to find us, as far as donation wise, YouTube wise, or even just on any platform, or even on our website, and the number is up there, right? To text us, right? It'd be better to text. If you call, that's fine. I just usually don't get the messages right away, and I don't get the calls always right away the way you have it set up. So we do have this stuff. It will be recorded, all these different things, etc. If you want more information, especially if you're on TikTok, just DM me. I promise you, just DM me. If you're listening on YouTube to the recording later on, just DM me and let me know. We'll make sure that we get this information for you. All right. But if you go to the website, actually, we don't have the classes set up yet. I haven't published it yet. So it will be updated on the website. But just get in contact with me and I'll send you everything. I'll text it to you right back, or email it to you, etc. Okay? But you can get in touch with us with anything you see up here. The number to text, once again, 202-599-7312. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time, your talent, your effort, your energy, finance, all those things. That'll be starting the week of October 11th. The week of October 18th is going to be the week of October. So October 11th will be the classes. The week of October 18th, on Mondays only, we'll have a special Zoom session. All those classes will be on Zoom, by the way. October 18th, we'll have a special session where that'll be on Zoom at 6:45 a.m. to 7:45 a.m. I'll be on 6:30 a.m. if you want to join me a little early, but 6:45 a.m. we'll start right on time. We're just doing strict Bible study for those who've been asking us to just strictly focus on some biblical stuff from Genesis all the way through Revelation. We'll start doing that once a week, Mondays, 6:45 a.m. Eastern and New York time. That one I'm not so sure if every single one will be recorded, but you're more than welcome to join us on it, and just ask for the Zoom link. Once again, get in contact with us. We'll send you the Zoom link. Don't even have one set up yet, but I'll make sure one is set up by the end of the day, and I can send that out. But you probably want me to send it. You know what? We'll just do it the way I was going to do it. I'll send it out probably like October 17th, that Sunday, just to make sure that it's one of the last things that you have from us, so that you don't have to search through it and search through it and search through it to find it, okay? So October 17th on Sunday, we'll send that out. October 30th, which is the last Sunday of October, we will be having our Brothers in Black event. It'll be at 8:00 p.m. Eastern in New York time, and we invite you to invite, whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, you're invited to come out to it. All brothers, we're asking that you come in solidarity dressed in black. So please do that. Please, sir. Please, ma'am, if you'd like to come, that'll be at 8:00 p.m. Eastern in New York time. So we're excited about that. And October 1st, I skipped that. October 1st, that's Yah's Land Project 83. That's when we'll start that, as far as those who are connected, those of us who are helping to make sure that we get the land by October next year. For those 30 families that are willing to give $83 and some change a month, to make sure it's at a specific and secure account that nobody's going to be able to touch up until it's time to spend it in October 1st at the earliest, right? October 1st next year, our goal is to go out and buy land. And so if we can get 30 families, not even 30 people, if you want to be different people in the same family that do this, you're more than welcome. If you want to give more, we're asking, though, if you want to be part of this unit, you cannot give any less than $83 and some change a month. And what that's going to do is that's going to help us next year to go somewhere and get land. First thing we're doing is focusing on food. Then, of course, we got to focus on some places for people to stay that are going to help to tend the food. Then we're going to focus on making sure we build up these gates. Then we're going to secure ourselves, right? And by the way, this isn't a camp. You don't have to stay there. You can't don't have to get permission to come or go. This is just land that we're all making sure we secure so that we have food, we have a place for people to go. If people can't, get fired, or if people can't find work or whatever, they can live there for basically dirt cheap. Because at the end of the day, once they get on their feet, the only thing we're going to ask is going to be $200 a month, which means, let's say you only make a $1,500 a month and you have no bills, because we're going to take care of electricity, water, with all those different things or whatever. Then so be it, right? So we'll take care of all those different things for you. So if you want more information on that, get in contact with us and the information above. Thank you for the reminder, babe. If you are taking the classes, we do the classes 8 sessions. It'll be 2 months. So it'll be October, starting the week of October 8th, going through December. And no, this time I'm not going to worry about if there's holidays. If there's holidays you celebrate that don't go with Israelite holidays, Hebrew holidays, biblical holidays. Like if you around the Christmas season, I'm not going to stop a class just because it comes around that season. So if you want to take the class, you're more than welcome to. And as far as donation that we ask for a donation of $90 total. That would be $45 a month. That basically is $45 for the first 4 classes, $45 for the next 4 classes. You're going to get 8, you'll get no less than 8 hours of information and stuff, and then of course the degrees that we give you and the certification, all those things we'll send to you as well. So that's how those things work. If you'd like to be a part of it, feel free to be part of it. Other than that, I've got to get on the road. I've got to take my leave from you. So I appreciate you. I thank you. Thank you for being positive. Thank you for being amazing. Thank you for making generational change. Thank you for listening. And once again, don't just hear what I say and do it because I said it. Hear what I say, study it, and if it makes sense, if it's contextual, if it's factual, then start looking at these things and saying, maybe I do need to make some changes, because it's not about you, just us. It's about so many different people coming down the road, okay? So we thank you. We honor you for your time. I see some people even texting me now talking about we want to be part of Yah's Land Project or the classes and all that. So I appreciate it. Give me some time. Very busy individual. I promise you, though, I'll get to you, and I'll get to you personally. And if we need to have a phone conversation, text conversation, email conversation, whatever it is, we will make sure that you are well aware of how everything's going to work. We're thankful and grateful for you. And as always, we give all honor to the Most High. And my prayer is that you not be hearers of this word, but doers as well. So we thank you, we honor you, we lift you up, and we lift up the Most High, who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all we could ever ask or think, according to the power that He's already placed inside of you. That being said, as always, this is Pastor Kofi, aka the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant to Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken, until I have the great pleasure, privilege, and opportunity, and even responsibility of being in front of you all again. Please remember, as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, we shall be the reason this world changes for the better. Bare minimum will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. Peace.